This is part 4 of the Forefoot pain series, and the reason we're saving it for last is not because it's last in importance, it's probably first in importance. A lot of foot pain comes from wearing improper footwear. So knowing what a shoe is and how it's fitted and how it should be shaped for your foot is critically important, especially for you Alaskans that take off on holidays with one pair or two pairs of shoes that are designed for beaches, and then you're ended up walking excessively on one pair of ill-fitting shoes. But in general, if we switch over to this piece of paper here, these are the components that you're looking for a shoe. You're looking for the base. For most people nowadays, for a forefoot pain, we're looking for a rocker component, and most of the shoes now that are European style, almost all have a rocker forward, and they call these walker shoes, or varieties of other names. And there's so many out there now that I won't list them, but most of the very successful footwear stores now are going to European last or European style shoes that make people's feet feel very comfortable. And the forefoot pain is often a direct effect of wearing shoes that are too tight. So you want to have a shoe that has enough width for your metatarsal spread, which spreads as you weight bear, and that width should be measured by standing on a piece of cardboard or a piece of paper and tracing their foot on that paper and then measuring that width. That width is their width of their foot left, their foot right. They should buy the pair of shoes for the widest and longest foot. You should know it. They should know that in centimeters, 9.2, 10.1, 9.8, whatever that is. They're going to take the shoe and flip it over and measure that from the side of the shoe where this part of the shoe goes to that bottom of the shoe. That has to have no vulcanized rubber. You want it to be wide enough to accommodate this number that you know. And if that shoe width does not have that number, then you should not wear those shoes if you have forefoot pain. If you have forefoot deformity and you have bunions, you have hallux valgus, you have claw toes, hammer toes, you have corns, you're always looking for a toe box. This is the toe box part of the shoe that actually is higher. And there are shoe companies that actually produce a very high quality, high toe box shoe that is very comforting for your foot. The vamp is this part of your foot shoe that has to accommodate problems in the forefoot, midfoot. And if you have a high arch foot like John does, you want to make sure that vamp isn't excessively tight, especially after you get bossing and saddle deformities of the junction of the first metatarsal, second metatarsal into the tarsal bones. So it's critical not to have excessive pressure on your tongue or your vamp. If your vamp is tight, you can use a red-headed vamp stretcher that actually unscrews and moves the top of that wood up against the laced up part of the shoe, forward part of the shoe, and will stretch out the front part of the shoe in the dimension of high to low. If it's a shoe that's too narrow, you can take it to a shoe cobbler store and have them do a opening stretch on the turn of their angle device here. They use a leather softener, stretch it out, and if they have a bunion that they want to leave a little bump on, they'll take a metal bump that's already pre-made and put it in a dot that can be, they have little holes on this wooden device, so that by putting this bunion bump on one part or the other part of the medial or lateral part of the wooden device, you can actually have a pre-bump made into your brand new shoe instead of waiting 5 years for that foot to get that bump stretched out. So you can stretch at least 1 or 2 widths with a device like this. You can take a shoe that has good quality leather and heighten the vamp. You want to get a quality shoe that has the good heel counter, often a pillow top, round softening that holds up against the heel and keeps the edge of the heel from hitting on the Achilles tendon area. You want to know your width of your foot, and you want to know your length and your width as you stand on a device called a Brannock device, which we're going to switch down to the bottom of the floor here. This Brannock device is actually something that a shoe store will often have Sometimes they take your word for what your size is, but you should always know that it's better to be fitted both left and right on a Brannock device, and we'll do that next. This is a Brannock device, and it's done in weight bearing. What we're trying to find out is John's arch length and his foot length and the width of the shoe that would be fitting this foot. This particular foot is an arch length of a 10 and a foot length of a 9 1/2. So you would fit the arch length so that the break of the shoe isn't premature. The width would be coming over to the Brannock device and finding the size of the length and coming down, and it's a C. So John's shoe should be a 10C on his left foot. The right foot would be reversed so that your right heel and John's right foot is a 10 1/2, and his arch length is 11, and his width is a C. So John could possibly, depending on which style of shoe he buys, go with 11C or a 10 1/2C. But if he measured the wrong foot accidentally, he would be disappointed because his shoe would be too narrow, possibly, but certainly too short, and the break would be quite a bit before the arch length. So you're always trying to accommodate the arch length with metatarsal forefoot pain just as much, if not more, than the foot length. This is an additional component for deciding what style of shoe you want to buy, and this can be with running shoes, walking shoes, everyday shoes, depending on your foot style. We know that John is a Pez Cavus foot with a plantar flexed first ray. We wouldn't want him to be in a very supportive shoe for a flat-footed, wide foot, so this would be inappropriate. But for a lot of people that need support in a non-rigid foot, this would be acceptable. For a rigid foot that has a little bit of banana varus with some supination, this would be a good style. And you got to still look at that width to make sure that that width will accommodate his number of whatever that width length for 9.2 or 10.1, whatever that is, has to be right here. His straight last is fairly straight at this end. This is even a straighter last, and this part doesn't matter as much, that you have an arch curved in, as long as the heel is going to fit well. The problem with a Dansko shoe, and a Dansko shoe has many good qualities, is that the heel counter is too big for a lot of people, particularly women, and they slide around without enough support on their heel. They also dig in with their toes a little bit more with a cloggy type shoe. The thing about Dansko that's so good is that it has plenty of box height, plenty of width, and it has a built-in arch support into the non-removable liner that often comes with a Dansko. With the other products such as Keen and some of the other shoes that are comparable to a Keen, they have quite a nice forefoot box, and they have removable liners a little bit more readily available if you want to post them or put padding. The problem with the liner that comes out of those shoes is that the lining is often too rigid to put the pad affixed to the back of it, and then you're left with trying to put a pad on the top of the Dansko or the top of a shoe liner that's too rigid or doesn't come out of the shoe. That's very difficult to get it just right. The worst shoe is what a lot of people seem to get in the past, which is a shoe that looks a little bit like a boat, and that's been a very popular shoe in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s, where it looks like it's pointed. And because they want that foot to still be comfortable, the shoe manufacturer will lengthen that shoe so it's even longer than the foot length. The toe will end right about in here with an exceedingly large amount of space in the front, but it's not going to slide too much because it's gripped pretty tightly in this area. The shoes that you have trouble with are the shoes that are too tight, that have anchor points right across their forefoot, especially with a little vulcanized rubber on the side. So you can't get the shoe stretched very adequately because you don't have laces. They're often slip-on shoes. They're too tight so that they don't slip off the feet. So you have a foot that's not being slipped in the shoe, but it's also too tight. And then you add to that travel by airplane or travel and walking when you're swelling your foot up, or trouble with times of your life when you have more swelling in your foot, and you have to realize that you're going to get forefoot pain from any of those issues that are either medically induced, travel induced, pregnancy, issues that are going to give a temporary fattening to your forefoot, have to be accommodated by your footwear. So if you have different styles of footwear, you're going to have one that's going to be good for a certain day or a certain activity. Activities that we know you're going to be narrow in are going to be cross-country skiing, biking, and some soccer, where they have very little padding in the soccer shoe. All of those shoes are going to be somewhat difficult, but you're only going to wear them for a few hours. But if you're going to wear a shoe for a long time on a trip, don't take the narrow one with you because it looks cute.